Hey friends, welcome back. So today I'm going to be doing my January wrap-up. Today is currently January 31st. I know I'm not going to be finishing any of the books that I'm currently reading today, so I'm going to go ahead and do my wrap-up. I'm also going to talk about my February TBR. So first off, I included in my very first weekly vlog of January, well, first of all, I did a video about how I was going to be picking my TBRs throughout the year, so I will link that above. And then I included January's TBR in one of my weekly vlogs. So I think instead what I'm going to do is, going forward, I'm going to do my wrap up and then include my TBR instead of including it in a weekly vlog. So like I said, I will link that video about how I'm going to be picking my TBRs. But real quick, for purposes of this video, what I'm doing is I have a jar, and I've written out, I had 3 of my friends pick books off of my shelves, physical books off my shelves, and I wrote them out and put little slips of paper in a jar, and I'm picking from there so that I can read some of the physical books from my shelves. That is my goal for 2023, is to read as many of my physical books that I own as I possibly can. So that was the main way that I picked my reads for January, but then I also I have a second jar where I have just random books written down from a TBR jar that I did like a year or 2 ago. So I picked 3 from the jar from my friends, 3 from my random TBR jar, and then everything else I just kind of left open for mood reading. Once upon a time, like a couple of years ago, I was strictly like straight wanting to read from a TBR. I would set up a TBR and that's what I would stick to every month. But last year I decided to kind of relax on that a little bit, and I entered my like mood reading era because that took over completely. I didn't use TBRs basically at all last year. I just kind of read what I felt like reading, or if I heard about something that sounded good, I would just immediately pick it up. And that trend has apparently continued into 2023 because I created my TBR, and while I did finish some of the books that were on my TBR, I didn't actually read any of my physical books. The 3 books that I chose from my friends, the jar of books from my friends, I didn't read any of those. So like I said, I will link the video where I chose those up above in a card if you want to see that. But like I said, I didn't read any of those physical books. I have written down the ones that I had picked. So the 3 books that I chose that are physical books that I own are Where Dreams Descend, Egypt's Golden Couple, and I Hope You Get This Message. All 3 of those I chose from the jar. All 3 of those went back in the jar because I did not read those. So the other books that were on my list, the other 3 that I chose from the other jar, were Neon Gods by Katie Robert, Velvet Was the Night by Silvia Garcia Moreno, and Inheritance by Christopher Paolini. So Neon Gods, you'll see that later in the wrap-up, I did read. Velvet Was the Night, I'm actually currently reading, so you'll see that later on as well for my February TBR. And then Inheritance is also in that February TBR because I'm still finishing it. So really the only book on this list that I actually finished is Neon Gods. So like I said, I'll talk about that more in my wrap-up. But so I wasn't super successful with this TBR. Like I said, I definitely ended up sticking more to like my arcs, which is a good thing because I did really need to get better about reading the arcs that I'm given. And to mood reading, just kind of whatever struck my fancy, to like any, I'm very big about like if I'm watching a video on BookTube or I see a post on Bookstagram and it's something that sounds good, I will like immediately go look at the library and see if I can find it, or see if it's on Kindle Unlimited. Like once I hear about it, like I want it right then and there. So that's how I end up really like shifting around and jumping around, and how something like this happens and my TBR just kind of goes out the window. Yeah, so that is that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna pick any of those books this month. In February, I do still have some physical books that I have started, so I'll be able to So we'll still be getting some physical books checked off from the long list. I think I had 70 plus unread books on my shelves. So I do still have some physical ones that I will be reading in February, but I'm not going to be picking anymore. I think what I want to do is finish all of the books that I'm currently in the middle of. That's my problem, is that I will start books and then jump into a new book, then jump into a new book, then jump into a new book. And I end up being in the middle of like 10 to 12 different books, and I'm jumping around between all of them. So I think what I'm going to try to do in February is try to buckle it down and finish all of the books that I'm currently reading. I'm not going to start any new books. I'm going to stick to the ones, actually there's one exception to that. But I'm not going to read any new books. I'm only going to finish the ones that I'm already in. And then I will, once I finish all of those, then I can start fresh. Anyway, so let's talk about my wrap up for the month. Okay, so in February, I read a total of 12 books. See, 3 of those were physical books. Some of them were audiobooks, some of them were ebooks. And yeah, so I read 12 books. That's a good month for me. Usually I read between 10 to 12 books a month. So 12 is definitely pretty good, obviously on the higher side. So yeah, the first book that I finished in January, my first book of 2022 or 2023, was Death by Laura Thalassa. I always forget which one it is. So I gave this book 3 stars. I liked it. It wasn't bad. This was the 4th book in the series. This is the 4 Horsemen series. It wasn't bad. It was good. There were parts that were good. What I didn't love was how repetitive it was. So the thing about this series is that basically every book has the same premise of there being a horseman, a woman who's trying to stop him. They end up falling in love, and the woman convinces the horseman to stop, killing civilization in whatever manner, he does. And so because all of the premises are the same and the only thing changing really is the characters, by the time I got to the 4th book, it was pretty repetitive. So not only was like the plot itself already kind of outdone by the time I got to the 4th book, but then the whole entirety of that book in and of itself was repetitive. Probably, it was a pretty long book too. I think it was like 400 pages, I think, or maybe more. A good chunk of it probably could have been cut out and it would have still been the same thing. It was just happening over and over again that, so in this book, this book is about death, the 4th horseman, and the female main character, Lazarus, she cannot die. That's not true. She can die, but she comes back. So every time she dies, she's resurrected. And so a lot of the book was death chasing Lazarus, killing her, and then her coming back. And then she chases him, and then either he kills her or somebody else kills her, and then she comes back. And so they're chasing each other all over the country. She's trying to convince him to stop. She's trying to kill him, but he regenerates as well. So they can't. They keep killing each other, but neither of them stays dead. And that goes on for like 200 pages. And it just got, like I said, to be very repetitive. So again, it wasn't bad. It was decent. It just, like I said, by the time we got to the 4th book, it had already been done. So yeah, 3 stars for that one. And oh, I forgot to say also, the ones that I don't have physical books for, I will go ahead and put up the cover over here. Okay, so the second book that I read in January, I do have a physical copy of, and that was A Court of Thorns and Roses. I don't need to tell you what this book is about. I think everybody basically has either read it or knows what it's about at this point. This was my 5th time, I want to say, rereading the series. I reread this because I was reading it with my coworkers. Me and 3 of my other coworkers have kind of started our own little book club, and this is the 3rd book we've all read together. And so they wanted to read it, and I'm always up for a reread. And I was really excited. None of them had ever read the series before, so I was really excited to get to experience it with them and through them and hear their opinions and everything. This book for me is kind of, I wouldn't say it's a 5-star for sure. Every time I read it, it's 5 stars. But it's also kind of I don't want to say a throwaway. I feel like that's maybe exaggerating, but I skimmed through this one, I'll say. I hate Tamlin, which I think, you know, everybody does. And I feel like so much of the first portion of the book of Feyre going to, you know, the spring court and meeting Tamlin and meeting Lucien and everything that happens, just a whole chunk of time that she's at the spring court before Under the Mountain is kind of pointless. Like, I know it's the setup for everything that comes later, and it's where she meets Rhys and all that, but it's just kind of pointless. It doesn't really, you know, I feel like that's like the first, I guess that's the point, but, you know, that's like the first chapter, and that closes, and then everything else, you know, comes next. And so I already know what's going to happen, obviously, so I skip through those parts and just kind of skim to the, did I say skip? I don't skip, I skim through kind of towards the end of the book. And yeah, my coworkers really enjoyed it. One of them enjoyed it enough that she went ahead of all of us, and we were still on book 1 and she was already on book 4. So, and she's already ready for a reread as well, which is what happened to me the first time I read the series. I read it once and then immediately read it again through, maybe not immediately, like a month and a half later, maybe, or 2 months, read it again through audiobook. So I definitely understand that, like, sentiment. I love these books. I know these books are controversial. Some people love them, some people hate them. I love them personally. Every time I read them, I get sucked back in. I start them and I don't want to stop. I just love this world. I love the characters, more so later on in the series. But I love the characters. I love the character arcs. I just love everything about it. So yeah, I definitely understand her wanting to, like, dive in and just go straight through to all the books. My other 2 coworkers liked them as well. I think one had like some family stuff going on, so she read it a little bit slower. But yeah, I was really glad to have gotten to reread this. I planned on rereading it anyways. I usually do a reread like once a year, so yeah, that was, you know, kind of, this has kind of become like a comfort read for me because it's so familiar. But also, I do find myself like noticing things that I hadn't noticed in the past, which is always fun. So yeah, definitely 5-star. I think this will just, the whole series, well, maybe not the whole series, but this will always be a 5-star. Okay, so the second book that I read in January, I'll go ahead and I'll put the cover up here. This is Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. I was given this as an ARC through NetGalley, so I read this as an ebook. Talia Hibbert also wrote the Brown Sisters trilogy, which I really loved. The first book in that is Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I really loved those, so I was very excited for this one. This is Talia Hibbert's first YA romance, and so I was very excited for it. And I think I'm starting to get to the age where YA isn't as right for me, like, as it used to be. I don't enjoy YA as much. Maybe not, or maybe it's more YA romances that I don't enjoy as much anymore. I thought this was just okay. I ended up giving it 2 stars. I did not think that it was as good as the Brown Sisters trilogy. I think I went into it expecting it to be like the Brown Sisters trilogy with the banter and the characters and the side characters that you fall in love with, and like the humor and all those things. And I expected it to be that, just with less smut, basically. And I didn't get that. I know I've seen some reviews of people who really loved this. It didn't work for me. I didn't care about the characters. It was kind of enemies to lovers. They used to be best friends, and then they had a huge argument. One of them became more popular than the other and kind of left the other one behind. And I don't know, I didn't love it. I didn't care about the characters. And like I said, I ended up giving it 2 stars. Okay, so the next book was also an ebook, so I'll put the cover up here, and that was A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. I love Sierra Simone. Lesson in Thorns, yeah, is one of my favorite series. And she also writes the New Camelot series. I always forget the names of them, if it's like American Princess, something like that, American something. but the series is called the New Camelot series. I really like that one as well. So I'm very excited for this, a Christmassy, smutty book written by Sierra Simone. Sounded perfect. I did like this one. I gave it 3 stars. I think what kind of kept it from being a higher rating for me is that this book is literally about a porn star, and it seemed kind of tame, honestly. Compared to other Sierra Simone books, I think this was definitely more tame and not as much smut, not as like wild, I guess, as her other books. And like I said, it's literally about a porn star. So this is about and I can't even remember their names right now. But the main character, the female character, she is a porn star, and the male character is a former boy band member. He is trying to like fix his image and have more of a like good boy image, because he was like the bad boy of the boy band, and he had like a scandal at one point. And then she, like I said, is a porn star, and she wants to become a more like mainstream actress and do like feature films, like actual movies. And so they both end up getting cast in a Christmas movie, in a historical fiction Christmas movie, and it is on a channel called the Hope Channel, which is basically this world's like Lifetime network. And so she has to hide the fact that she's a porn star, because obviously they're not gonna have a porn star on that kind of channel. That's like, you know, Hallmark Network, you know, having one of their lead actresses be a well-known porn star, you know. So she has to hide it that she's a porn star. Nobody knows who she actually is until she gets on set and meets her male lead in this movie, and he knows exactly who she is. She also, not only is she a porn star, but she's also very popular and very well known and has a ton of followers on, I forget what the name of the app is, but it's basically their version of like OnlyFans. And so as soon as he sees her, he knows who she is, and he is a follower of her on her OnlyFans or whatever it is. So he knows who she is. And so shenanigans ensue. They're both trying to hide this secret. They both have like, I don't think like legal clauses in their contracts, but both of their like managers have told them like, you have to be on your best behavior. You can't hook up with anyone on the set. You have to be like cookie cutter, like what they would expect on the Hope Channel. And so of course the exact opposite happens. They end up falling in love. It was really cute. I liked it. It was definitely a good rom-com. I liked the Christmassy vibes. Like I said, it was just very tame for what I expected from Sierra Simone. So yeah, I don't remember if I said that. I gave it 3 stars. It was cute. It was good, but not great. Okay, so the next book was Learn My Lesson by Katee Robert. I always say Roberts, and then I have to remind myself that there's no S, it's Robert. Katee Robert. I will put the cover up here because this was an ebook as well. Learn My Lesson is the second book in the Wicked Villains series. And I really liked this one. I liked this one more so than Desperate Measures, I think was the name of the first book. So the first book is between Jasmine and Jasmine and Jafar. And I liked that one. I think I gave it 3 stars. I enjoyed Learn My Lesson, the second book in the series, more, which isn't surprising. This one is about Hercules. So it's a poly relationship, or they end up being in a poly relationship. This is about Hercules, Meg, and Hades, which I really enjoyed. I've been listening to the audiobook. Did I say this was an ebook? It was actually an audiobook. I listened to audiobooks of these, and they have different narrators for each character, which I really liked. The only thing that I don't love is that the male characters' voices, I guess, don't match up to what I'm expecting. They're very like deep and gruff, and I don't know, it's just not like what I envisioned in my head, I guess. But I enjoyed this one more so than I did Desperate Measures. I liked the relationship dynamics. I enjoyed the somewhat character arc that Hades kind of goes through, the transition that he goes through, him and his relationship with Meg kind of changes throughout the story. The only thing that I didn't like about this one, and what kept it from being like a 4-star, was that the end like conflict was between Hades and Zeus was resolved super quickly. Like it was resolved literally in like a page. And it was really obvious. Like I saw it coming from the beginning of the book. So not only was I like not surprised, but then it was just easily resolved. It like ended super quick. And it just wasn't very like realistic, I guess. I mean, none of this series is very realistic. It's obviously about like fictional, or I guess based on Greek mythology or whatever, but it didn't like make sense, I guess, is a better way to put it. But yeah, so that's what kept it from being a 4-star. Like I said, I'm now, or I guess I'll talk about that in my TBR, but I have moved on to the next book in the series as well. But yeah, I think I've always loved, it's kind of polar opposites because this is very smutty, but I've always loved the Disney movie Hercules, and so I think, and I do love Aladdin as well, but I really love Hercules. Like I can quote that movie word for word, and I do really like Greek mythology and that kind of thing, so I think that's why I enjoyed this one more than the previous one. And then the third book is one that I think I'm really gonna like. So yeah, that was the 5th book that I read in January. Okay, so the 6th book is an ebook, and this one was a book that I received from NetGalley. So this is Central Places by Delia. I'm not sure how you say her last name, if it's Sai. It's spelled C-A-I. I gave this 3 stars as well. And I think again I said it was an art. So the premise of this is this couple, they live in New York City, and the main female character, I'm so bad with names, I don't remember her name, but she is originally from like a small town somewhere in the Midwest, and she's Chinese American. Her parents immigrated from China before she was born, and they moved to this very small town, and both like were able to make something of themselves. Her mom is like very involved in the church, and I want to say it was like a professor or something, and now she's retired, and I forget what the dad did, but they were able to come to this country with nothing and make something of themselves. And she just talks about how like she's embarrassed of them, and she how hard it was. Like she was very like, woe is me, because they didn't have a lot of money, and how the other kids, like they live in the poor part of town and their house is run down, and she didn't have new clothes in school like the other kids. And I get like those things are valid, especially when you're a kid, those things like matter, but she also kind of shit on her parents, which I didn't love. And then like I said, she was also mean to the fiance. And like I get that maybe this book, one of the things I didn't like was the mom and daughter like dynamic. So they argued a lot, and she held a lot of grudges towards her mom, and I think maybe that might just be because I know that like a lot of, how do I say this? I know that a lot of children who of like Asian parents have strange relationships, or can't have strange relationships because they have very high expectations, and that was one thing in the book as well. And those aren't my lived experiences. I've never had that happen. I'm not Asian, so maybe this book just wasn't meant for me. But I didn't love like that relationship dynamic. It seemed to me like the main character was holding grudges against her parents for things that yes, some of the things were valid, but also for some things that they couldn't control. Like they did the best they could, and it wasn't enough for her. So yeah, that is like the main thing that kept it being, that kept it a 3-star. I just did not love the main character, and I couldn't sympathize with her or empathize with her, and I didn't like her. Okay, so the 7th book that I read in January was also an ebook. It was also an ARC that I got from NetGalley, but actually I ended up really liking this one. This was a 3-star. This is, I guess I should show you the name of it. It's called French Kissing in New York by Anne-Sophie. I think it's pronounced Juno, but it's like spelled like I think it's French with a lot of vowels, and I don't know how to pronounce it. But like I said, I'll have the cover up here. The thing that made this book for me was the way the author just like crafted the world, or not crafted, I guess maybe not crafted, described the world. So this book is set in New York City, and while reading this, I felt like I was in New York City. Like the places that she described were places that I have been, and I could just see it so vividly in my mind. Like I felt like I was there, and I loved that. There was times when she was talking about like Times Square and how like packed Times Square can be, and how it can be like so like packed and like claustrophobic that it's overwhelming, and like being on a like a tour in the harbor, like on a boat that goes around the Statue of Liberty, like Ellis Island, and like her descriptions were perfect. Like I said, it was so easy to just imagine yourself there with the characters. Then the second thing that was amazing was the descriptions of food. Again, this book like literally made me hungry. I love books about food, and this was like a top tier one. If you love books about cooking, about like restaurants, the restaurant industry, food, this is a great book. So the premise of this is a girl who is from France, Margot, I think her name is. She lives in France with her mother, who owns a restaurant, but she doesn't live in Paris. She lives in like a village, I don't know if that's the right word, but a village like out in the countryside, in the French countryside. And she does go to Paris to do like a summer cooking course. She wants to be a chef as well. Her father lives in New York City, so she was actually born in New York, and then when they split, the mom took her to France and the dad stayed in New York. And so now she has just graduated from high school. She just turned 18, and she has now, or she's always dreamt of going to New York City and working in a restaurant and working her way up. And she has like these grand ideas of how that's going to look and what's going to happen. So the thing that I didn't like about this book was how like predictable it was. So at the beginning of the book starts off with Margot being in Paris for this cooking program, and she meets this guy, and they spend one day together and are like convinced that it's love at first sight. They're madly in love. He is going to be like traveling around the world, like backpacking through Europe and all that kind of stuff, while she, I think this is during like the summer between her junior and her senior year. So I think she's going to go back to her village or whatever and finish high school. He's going to continue backpacking around the world, and then they're going to meet in New York City in a year. And then they will be together from there. He also works like in the restaurant industry. But they make some really stupid decisions. Like they don't know each other's last names. They don't trade phone numbers. And this is set in like current times. They don't exchange phone numbers. They don't exchange like social media, emails, nothing. They know nothing about each other. Literally the only thing they know about each other is their first names and where they might be like working. So they agree to meet in Times Square on New Year's Eve at midnight. Or maybe it's not on New Year's Eve. I don't remember. But they decide to meet in Times Square at midnight. And that they're going to do it. They pick the date a year from whenever. And after that, they'll be happy and they'll be in love and blah, blah. So Margot like fixates on this guy, on this relationship. She spends her whole senior year saying that she is going to go to New York. They're going to meet. They're going to fall in love. They're going to be together, blah, blah. She goes to New York. I don't want to spoil too much, but I feel like this can't be too much of a surprise. They don't find each other. she's looking for him. She can't find him. She doesn't realize how crowded New York City, or, you know, Times Square in New York City is going to be. And so she thinks that they miss each other. Everything else that happens, or not everything else, but a lot of the like plot points were super predictable. Like I saw coming from the first part of the book. There was one thing that I think the author intended to be like a big twist that I had seen coming like 4 or 5 chapters before. So that really kind of ruined it for me. Like if you're gonna try to have like these little like twists and like moments of surprise, then like make them good. Like I don't want to be like 10% of the book, 10% of the way into the book, basically already being able to predict what's going to happen at the 80% mark. You know, I want to be somewhat surprised. And that just didn't happen. So I gave this 3 stars purely for the environment, for the descriptions of the environment and the food and all that. Okay, so the 8th book that I read in January is The Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the 2nd book in the, I think that the series might be called The Hawthorne Legacy also, or Inheritance Games, I'm sorry, is the name of the series. This is the 2nd book in the series. I really liked this one. So, and I say that, but I had actually started the book, put it down, and then picked it up like 6 months later. But I did actually end up really enjoying it. I just had to kind of push through the first, like 20%, I guess. And I guess the problem for me was that in the like first half of the book, I guess, or first part of the book, the main character is having, like issues with her dad, and they have a very strained relationship. He's trying to take advantage of her, and he's basically like exploiting her, and he's kind of bullying her, trying to manipulate her, and that was just kind of triggering for me. Dad and daughter relationships are always kind of hard for me. My dad passed away when I was 2, and so I don't really have like a point of reference, but also to see like a dad taking advantage of his daughter is just kind of triggering to me. So that part kind of put me off the first time I tried to read it, and then I picked it back up again because I do really love this the series, and I love the characters, and so I decided to kind of push through it and skim through that part, and that ended up being enough for me to be able to get through. I don't know if I loved this one as much as the first one. I can't remember what the name of the first one was, but this is the second one, so I don't want to give too much away of the plot. But basically, this girl, and again, I can't remember her freaking name, finds out that this rich man that she has only ever met once in her life left her his entire, like, estate, and he's worth, like, billions. And he left her everything and didn't leave his family anything, and he has... I always forget if it's 3 or 4, if the Hawthorne brothers are 3 or 4. I think they're 4. There's Nash, Gray. For as much as I love these characters, you would think I'd remember their names. But there's 4 of them. And so he doesn't leave them anything. He doesn't leave their parents anything. He leaves everything to the main female character. And so it's very like Knives Out. It's a lot like Clue. There's a lot of like puzzles to figure out and riddle. Well, like within the story, the characters are figuring out a lot of puzzles and following the clues and like scavenger hunt type things, and like one clue leads to the next clue leads to the next clue, and they're trying to figure out this mystery, like the family mystery. And I really, like I said, I really enjoy the series. I really love the characters. The Hawthorne brothers are some of my favorite characters. The best parts, honestly, of these books are, one, the like puzzle, like Knives Out type, of like themes or like plot, and then the characters, the banter between the characters. I love sibling relationships, and the brothers are, you know, they bicker and they fight, but they at the core, they are like strong and they love each other and they would do anything for each other. They have each other's backs, and I love that kind of dynamic. And then they kind of bring the main character like into the fold, kind of. So there's some of that like found family as well. There's some romance too. There's a little bit of a love triangle going on between two of the brothers and the main female character, which I like also. But I think it's done pretty well. And yeah, so like I said, I give this 3 stars. It probably would have been 4 stars if that first part had not just like triggered me so much. But that's obviously a me thing, not like the book. Okay, so the next book I actually do have a physical copy of, and that is Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. I really liked this. I gave it 4 stars. The interesting thing is that I actually ended up liking, so this is dual POVs, Ariadne's POV and then her sister Phaedra's POV, and I actually ended up liking Phaedra's chapters more. I think she was just more of an interesting character. Ariadne, she how do I want to put it? She basically, like, her whole storyline, she only does like one like rebellious thing in her entire life, and then which goes horribly wrong, and she ends up getting betrayed. And then after that, like, she basically lives like her head in the sand and allows herself to just completely forget about like the real world outside of the little island that she ends up on. Whereas Phaedra is very like strong-willed and more like feministic, and she gets thrust into this world of men and somehow still like comes out on top, I guess, and she like manipulates the men to get what she wants. I didn't like the end of where her storyline went, but yeah, overall I did really enjoy it. Like I said, I did like Phaedra's chapters more. This was not like, a lot of people say that it's like Circe and Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, but I think that that comparison is only accurate in the fact that they're like retellings of Greek mythology. Other than that, I think Madeline Miller's writing is so like beautiful and lyrical and like melodic and just like flowery. This is, it's written very well and it has really good, some very good quotes and stuff, but it's not like flowery and like poetic. It's more kind of to the point, which I think is why I liked this, because I don't usually love flowery and like poetic writing. So it's actually a surprise that I did really like Circe and Song of Achilles. But yeah, I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. Okay, so the next book, the 10th book, is Neon Gods by Katie Robert. So I gave this 3 stars. I did not like this as much as I liked Desperate Measures, or even I don't think I'm gonna like this series as much as I like the Wicked Villains series. The Wicked Villains series, I love that it's like, I know that these characters aren't like inherently Disney characters, like Disney doesn't like own them, but all these characters are all from Disney movies, I guess is the best way to say it, and I love that. So I love taking these like characters that I loved in my childhood and that were a big part of my childhood. I'm a huge Disney person. If you know me, I'm a huge Disney person. And to see that kind of flipped on its head and made for adults, I love that. So Neon Gods is more based on Greek mythology. This is Persephone and Hades retelling. And I just feel like that's been done so much. I feel like there are so many Greek retellings out there, especially Hades and Persephone. I feel like there are a lot of them. And this was just okay. I thought the smell was pretty good. There's some like BDSM like aspects to it. There's some dom sub dynamic, but nothing that like blew me out of the water. Yeah, it was basically just kind of middle of the road. Pretty good. Okay, so the next book I have in physical as well, and that is A Quarter of Mist and Fury. So this, like I said earlier, I read with my coworkers. We did move on to the second book. I think I'm the first one to finish it, other than the coworker who like passed all of us and already finished A Quarter of Silver Flames. But I think the other 2 girls are still reading this. I love this book. I love this one so much more than the first one. I love the way towards the end we start to see Feyre start to come out of her shell and embrace her powers and start to, a little bit at least, move past the things that happened under the mountain. We see her start to somewhat deal with her trauma, her PTSD. I love that Reese also has, you know, trauma and, you know, has to deal with that PTSD and those nightmares and those like trauma responses and everything. I love, you know, this is where Cassian and Azrael and Moore are introduced, and Amryn are introduced, which I love them. I love, like, I always end up loving side characters more than the actual main characters, and that is, like, I love Reese and Farrah too, but that's definitely the case with these. I love the side characters. We also see a little bit more of Elaine and Nesta in this one as well. So yeah, this is like a big book and I always fly through it. So yeah, 5 stars. Definitely the thing about this is I immediately want to go into A Court of Wings and Ruin, because of the way this one ends. I don't know if there's people out there still who have not read this series, but just in case, I'll try to avoid spoilers. What happens at the end of this book and the way the next book starts, like what Feyre does in the Spring Court, is like my favorite thing ever. Like the ultimate revenge. I like getting through the end of this book, like it's okay because I know what's coming. And I just love to see her take her revenge. So yeah, I have to stop myself from diving right into the next one. But if I know if I start a court of Wings and Ruin, I won't stop. I'll want to keep going through A Court of Frost and Starlight and then into A Court of Silver Flames. And these books are big. And like I said, I do fly through them, but still it's going to take up a lot of time. And I'm trying to read books on my shelves that I have not read. Not ones that I've already read 5 times. So, yeah, that is that one. Okay, so now book 12, I have the cover up here as well. This is Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. I received this as an ebook from NetGalley. I was just approved for it like last week, and I think it comes out on February 7th. So, and I didn't have any arcs to read for February, so I wasn't worrying about arcs as much. And then they approved me for this one, so I decided to like hurry up and get it done so I could, you know, talk about it on pub day and get my review up and do all this stuff. And I really liked this one. Again, I only gave it 3 stars. It didn't blow me away, but it was good. I do really like Tessa Bailey's books. I enjoyed It Happened One Summer, and I forget what the second book is called, but I enjoyed both of them, and I liked the Hot and Hammered series as well, I think is what it's called. I like Tessa Bailey. She is a she has become like an auto-buy author for me. I have not read Happenstance yet because I can't find it anywhere. And I haven't been able to buy it, but that one I think is probably going to end up being my favorite. This one was good. I didn't like it as much as the other 2 series. It is going to end up being a series. I know there's at least a second book coming out. This is about the main character who is a landscaper in Napa. This is set in Napa, in like wine country. She has taken over her grandmother's business. Her grandmother just recently passed away, and she's dealing with like the grief from that. And she ends up like running into her high school crush, who has been out of Napa for many years, and she has had a crush on him for like 15 years. She never let that crush go. It has extended like into adulthood. She's been like stalking him on social media and all this stuff. And the book starts off with her like vandalizing this new store that just opened. So there is a wine shop that her grandmother used to frequent like her whole childhood, and so she's very like nostalgic and protective of this wine shop and the little old lady who owns it. It's called Uncultured, and right next door a new wine shop just opened with like, it's like the polar opposite. Like the one store is like this little old lady, and it's like a institution of the town. It's been there for like 30 years or something, and then it pops up this new store that is like the new generation. It's very like millennial, and they do have like all these gimmicks and themes and stuff, and so they pull all of and their name is even like a gimmick of the name next door, of the store next door. So it's like Uncorked and Corked, I believe, or vice versa maybe. I think it is vice versa. I think the old lady store is corked, and they made their store named their store Uncorked. So they also have no like originality either. And so it has kind of like You've Got Mail type vibes, with like the competing businesses, and she's supporting the smaller business, and here comes this bigger like box store to compete with them, and she's like doing different things to like sabotage them. And they also both have, so it's not like Grumpy Sunshine, it's more like she's more spontaneous and free-willed and is like late to everything and doesn't like organization and that kind of stuff, whereas he suffers from anxiety and I think maybe like some OCD, and is very like, he always feels like he's losing time, he's losing minutes. He's very like rigid and strict and like type A, and always has every minute of every day like accounted for, and she's the polar opposite. And he's also dealing with like trauma from an incident that happened in the past. Yeah, I think this one definitely had a lot more layers of like kind of like hard things. Like there's mental illness, there's like family passing, there's grief, there's like hard like family dynamics, and like the like failing the expectations of your parents and things like that. So it was good, I liked it, but I did not enjoy it as much as her other two series. So there you have it. Those are the 12 books that I read in January. I'm going to put a little graphic up here of the 12 of those books. And yeah, I feel like it was a good reading month. As far as quantity goes, quality, maybe not as much. There was a lot of 3 stars. But that's not terrible. But it's not like amazing either. But yeah, that is it for January's TBR. Now let's get, or January's wrap up, I should say. Now let's get over into February's TBR. So like I said, this time I'm not going to pull. I have like the little slips here from the jar of the books that I did finish, or the ones that I'm in the process of finishing. I'm not going to pull the slips out because I think they're just going to get lost in the books that I'm already reading, and I'm not going to get to them again. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to finish all the books that I'm currently reading, which is hard for me because, like I said, I'm very like impulsive and very much have become very much of a mood reader. So I'm going to try to not pick up any new books, like I said, with the exception of one that I'll talk about, and finish the ones that I'm already reading. So the first book is Velvet Was the Night by Silvia Moreno. It's either Silvia Garcia Moreno or Moreno-Garcia. I think it's Moreno-Garcia. She wrote Mexican Gothic, which I didn't love. I actually DNF'd it. But I think it was because I picked it up like after like Halloween and the spooky season, and it was already going into like Thanksgiving and Christmas time, and I just wasn't in the headspace for it anymore. So I don't think that it was necessarily bad. I know a lot of people really like that book, so I may pick it up again this year in the fall again. But it's from the same author. This is set, I want to say like in the 70s or 80s maybe, in Mexico, and it's about like rival, or I don't know if it's rival, I'm only like 20% in maybe, but it's about a gang and this main character named Elvis, who is working for this man in a gang. I'm not sure exactly what happens. I cannot give a very good like synopsis for these books because I don't like to read synopsis. I go into 99% of the books I read completely blind. Some of them I'll have like a vague notion of what it's about, but I usually hardly ever know details. So because I'm only like 20% in, I don't know much more than that. I don't know exactly what's gonna happen. There is, I think, there's 2 POVs. So one from the man Elvis. I want to say he's in like his early 20s maybe, and there's a female character who her mom keeps pushing her like to get married and to settle down and all that stuff, to find a better job, provide more money for the family, those things. And also her mom is very like, shows a lot of favoritism and towards her younger sister, I think it is. And it's just like nothing she does is enough, nothing she does is right. And I'm assuming their stories are going to come together at some point. I just haven't gotten to that part yet. So that is one of the books I want to finish. The next book is The Coldest Girl in Coldtown by Holly Black. This, a lot of people I think have read a lot. I know Mel to the Any, when she still had her book channel, talked about this book, and I really enjoyed Holly Black's writing. One of the things that I wanted to do this year was read like the backlist of authors that I liked. And like I said, or maybe I didn't say that in this video, but I really enjoyed the Folk of the Air series. And with The Stolen Heir, which I have not read yet, coming out, it just kind of made me realize that I wanted to go back and read more of Holly Black's books. So this was the one that I was able to get from the library. This is set in a world where vampires exist. They haven't always existed. They just kind of came up out of nowhere one day. And so in response to that, this is set in the US, but I think all over the world, the governments of the world set up what are called cold towns, where they basically like create these huge like compounds, I guess, or they wall in these towns and make it so nobody can get in or out. And that's where they keep all the vampires. And so there are different cities that become cold towns. And this is about a girl whose, her mom ended up becoming a vampire. And just because you get bit by a vampire doesn't necessarily mean that you'll turn. Some people turn, some don't, I guess. This is another one that I'm only like 30% in maybe, so I don't know exactly where it's going to go. Her mom became a vampire, and she actually ended up biting and almost killing the main character. And the dad actually ended up having to kill the mom, I think by either chopping her head off or setting her on fire. I don't remember which it is. Now the girl has ended up on a road trip with her ex-boyfriend, who is becoming a vampire, is turning a man who was already a vampire, and 2 other like teenagers. So in this world, the vampires are like really popular, and they end up having like fans. And so these teenagers, a lot of teenagers will try to get into the cold towns because they want to be bit by the vampires and they want to become vampires. So she ends up on a road trip to one of the cold towns with, like I said, her ex-boyfriend, who is turning, a man who's currently a vampire, and then 2 kids who are trying to get into the cold town. And I just got to the part where they just got to the cold town, so I'm not sure what else is going to happen in that. But yeah, that's the second book. The third book is Saint by Adrienne Young. This is the prequel to the Fable series. This is about Saint, her dad, and her mom, Isolde, I think is her name. Again, I'm not very far into this. I think I'm maybe 30% in. But this is like the story about how they met and fell in love and everything that happens after. Can't give too much away because I think a lot of the same characters are the characters that we did already see like in the future, in Fable and Namesake. So it's like the prequel, basically how her parents fell in love before she came out, and everything that happened in that series happened. So far I'm really liking it. I'm listening to the audiobook of this, and I don't think I said that, the last 3, Velvet Was the Night, The Coldest Girl in Coldtown, and Saint are all 3 audiobooks. They have different narrators for the men, and then narrator for the females. And I really appreciate that, because sometimes when it's like a male trying to do a female voice or a female trying to do a male voice, it like throws me off if like sometimes they don't sound very good. So I appreciate that there's like these 2 differences. Then the next book is Inheritance, which is the 4th book in the Inheritance cycle. This is by Christopher Paolini. I talked about that one in that TBR video as well. I love this series. This is another series that I read over and over again. I don't even remember. I couldn't tell you when the first time I read this series was. Sometime in my childhood. And I have reread it several times since. But this series is so long and so like nuanced, and there's so much world building and different like creatures and like lore, and there's just so much that goes into it that every time I read it, I like learn something new, or I find something that I had forgotten about and now I remember. And yeah, I don't read a lot of like epic fantasy anymore. I used to be really into it, and this is more of a like, I don't know if it's considered a YA, or I don't think it's a middle grade, but it's definitely meant for like a younger audience. This was one of the first like full fantasy series that I ever read, and it's always kind of stuck with me. I have a hard time reading those long fantasy series, especially adult fantasy now, but this is one that I can always come back to and I really enjoy. Then the next book in the series is Dead Wake, which again, I'm gonna have the cover up here, and I'm listening to the audiobook as well. This is about the sailing of the Lusitania. This was a cruise liner at a few years, I think, after like this sinking of the Titanic. And this is just talking about how like this specific ship, but also that time, like during World War II, or World War I, I'm sorry, and how like Russians were torpedoing like civilian cruise ships, basically, if they came into what they call the dead zone or like restricted waters. And so this is the story of the Lusitania. Then the next book is Anastasia by Sophie Lark. This is one that I was looking forward to so much, and I have not finished it. It is so much longer than I realized. I'm reading the ebook, and I want to say the ebook is like 3,000 pages long or something. I really want to get a physical copy. I think I said this in a previous vlog, but I really want to get a physical copy because it has these gorgeous illustrations, and I can kind of see the illustrations in the ebook, but I know in having the physical copy would be like perfect. So I really want to get it. This is definitely a different take on the story of Anastasia. I've read other like retellings of Anastasia and have not loved them. But this one so far I'm really liking. There's like magic, there's some like fantastical elements, like magical realism. Obviously it's a true story. So she took, you know, the true story of the Romanovs and added like fantastical magical elements to it, which I really like. There have been a couple of things that have popped up in the story, like different events that I've gone and like turned around and Googled to see if they like really happened, and they did. Like I just read one last night that was called Bloody Sunday, or maybe that was this morning actually, where the like Imperial Guard shot at like rioters and people in the street and killed like hundreds of people. It turns out that really did happen. So I like that a lot of the like main focal points of the story are like built on truth, built on reality, on things that really did happen, and then she's just kind of sprinkled in the fantastical elements to it. So yeah, I'm really liking it. It's not that it's bad that it's taking me so long to read it. It's just that it's very long. And as you can see, I'm like in the middle of a million other books. So the next book is going to be Uncultured. I don't remember the name of the author, but I'll put it up here. I actually got this as an ARC back in like December, I think, or maybe even before that, maybe like November. This is about a woman who was born and raised in a cult, in a like sex cult, basically. She was raped and sexually abused and physically abused, mentally abused, emotionally abused, everything throughout her childhood. Her mom was married to like the leader of this cult. I don't remember if he's her father or not, but I want to say he was not. But yeah, she was raised in this cult, abused for majority of her childhood. And the main like essence of the story is that she eventually gets out of the cult and she ends up joining the US military. And a lot of the stories, her making these parallels about how the military, especially for a woman, is also a cult. And how like their viewpoints and their mindset and the way they're made to just follow and do as you're told and ask no questions, and the way women are treated and all that, like how being in a cult as a child wasn't much different from being in a cult or being in the military as an adult woman. And so it's really interesting so far. I'm not that far into it, so I'm still in the parts of her as a kid, but I do follow her on Instagram, and she talks about like the later parts of the book and the parallels, and it's really interesting. So yeah, like I said, I think about like 40% into that. Then I'm going to reread Ninth House. I actually got the audiobook of it so that I can listen to the audiobook and read the physical copy I have. I want to reread that. I really enjoyed the first book, Ninth House, so that I can then read Hellbent. I know like so many people have probably already read Hellbent, but I wanted to reread Ninth House before I got into Hellbent. So both of those are on my list for this month, Ninth House and Hellbent. Hellbent is the one new book that that says like the exception to that rule, that I will be reading. It is the only book that I have not already started. Then I have A Worthy Opponent, which is the third book in the Wicked Villains series. That is, I was talking about earlier, Desperate Measures, Learn My Lesson. Now the third book is A Worthy Opponent. This one I think may end up being my favorite because it is Hook and Tink romance, and Peter is like the bad guy. I think he's like the abusive, stalkery ex-boyfriend, who's also like a mob boss, I think. I love anything having to do with Peter Pan. I love Peter Pan retellings. I've never read one that was like a Hook and Tink romance, so I'm really excited to get more into it. think I'm like 20% into that, but I think, like I said, I'm going to end up loving this one. Then I received 3 books from Penguin Random House. I have like their app where they allow you to listen to arcs of audiobooks. And so the first one is Someone Else's Shoes by Jojo Moyes, I think. She wrote You Before Me, which I really enjoyed that book. And I liked the movie as well. So I wanted to try this out, see what I thought. This is her newest book. I am like 20% into this. The book itself is okay. One of the main characters, there's 2 female main characters. One of them I cannot stand. I already despise her. Every time her chapters come up, like I said, I'm listening to the audiobook. I really wish I could just skip it because I do not like her. But we'll see how far that goes or what else happens. Then the next book is Our Share of the Night, Our Share of Night, maybe. I don't know what this is about. I think it's like a horror, maybe. I think it's going to be scary. I'm not sure. I know Jordaline talked about this book and she reads horror mostly, so I'm assuming it's some kind of horror. But yeah, I got the audiobook of that, but I know nothing of what it's about. Like I said, I'll put the cover up here. Then the next book is How to Sell a Haunted House. Put it up here as well. I am really excited about this one. I know this was Olivia from Olivia Reads a Latte, her favorite book or one of her top books of 2022. And I really like this author. I read Southern Women's Guide to Vampires, or Southern Book Club's Guide to Vampires. That book was crazy. And this one is just as crazy, if not more. There's like, I think, possessed dolls. I'm like 30% into it. Or a haunted house. Well, the haunted house is in the name, but I wasn't expecting there to be dolls. I don't like dolls, and especially like haunted, freaky dolls that keep moving. Don't like. But it's definitely giving me like the creeps so far, which I do like. I do like to be like scared and like uncomfortable in reading these kind of books. Grady Hendrix has the like ability to write just these like bananas like plots and like stories and just things that happen. And so I'm excited to see where else it goes. The one thing I don't like about this is that the 2 main characters I don't like. They're like, they keep fighting. Both their parents just died, and really the only thing they care about is fighting over the inheritance. So that I don't like. But other than that, the actual like part about the house being haunted and the spooky stuff that's happening, that I am liking. Then the next book is called Rivers Sing Me Home. I just got the audiobook for this. I haven't actually started it, so I guess that's the second exception to that rule. But this was actually an option on Book of the Month this month. I haven't picked my book yet, so I'm not sure what I'm going to pick. Actually, so was Someone Else's Shoes was an option as well. But this, I don't know exactly what it's about, but I believe it's set during the time of like slavery, or like a mother is was enslaved with her kids, and then the kids were sold, and now she's trying to get them back. I'm not sure exactly, but I know it's a historical fiction, and it sounds really good. I usually like, historical fictions. I'm kind of a history nerd, so yeah, I'm really excited for that one too. So yeah, there you have it. Those are all the books that I am hoping to read in February. I'm probably not going to get to all of these. Let's see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. There are 13 books on this list, so I don't know that I'll get to all of those. I did read 12 books in January, so who knows, maybe. And a good amount of those are audiobooks too, so I could possibly get through a lot of them. But yeah, that is it for now. If you got to the end of this video, thank you so much for listening to me ramble about these books. And go ahead and like this video, comment down below, consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one.